Welcome, students of the Word. It is a genuine joy to have you here for this explanator of Brother Woody Brohm's brilliant theological overview of the book of Isaiah. I'm really thrilled to guide you through this exposition today. You know, Isaiah's scroll rises up like a magnificent, towering mountain range right in the middle of our prophetic canon. It joins these severe, thundering courtroom indictments with breathtaking hymns of comfort, eventually opening all the way up to a vision of a completely renewed creation. Today, we're going to unpack this masterpiece together. We'll look at its deep historical roots, its structural genius, and its incredibly profound dispensational theology. So grab your notebooks and let's dive right in. To build a proper, rock-solid grammatical historical foundation, we always need to start with what we call the core four. Operating from a conservative stance, we confidently affirm the author as Isaiah, the son of Amos. His prophetic ministry was remarkably extensive. We're talking about a period spanning the reigns of 4 different kings: Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. That puts us roughly between 740 and 680 BC. His primary audience? The southern kingdom of Judah, specifically its capital, Jerusalem. And the overarching theme of it all is righteous judgment and faithful redemption. Isaiah is going to reveal the Holy One of Israel as a righteous judge who absolutely must confront idolatry, but simultaneously as a faithful Redeemer who always keeps his covenants. Here is our syllabus for today's masterclass. We'll start with our foundations, the core 4. Next, the macro structure of Isaiah. Then, dispensational context and covenants. After that, progressive revelation and prophecy. We'll move into the enduring message today and wrap up with a final blessing and conclusion.
Section 1. Foundations, the core 4.
This opening verse from the NIV really sets a sobering, heavy tone for the book. Judah was living in this incredibly tense age of political entanglements and massive spiritual drift. The Assyrian Empire was aggressively flexing its military might, literally redrawing the map of the ancient Near East, while the northern kingdom of Israel was teetering right on the edge of total exile. It was exactly in this fiery crucible that Isaiah received his calling. Over in chapter 6, he sees this awe-inspiring vision of the Lord, high and exalted, enthroned in the temple. A burning coal physically brands his lips with holiness, commissioning him to go preach to a rebellious, stubborn people. They were children acting like strangers, terribly slow to hear. Yet, as Isaiah is going to repeatedly emphasize to us, they were never beyond hope.
Section 2. Macro structure of Isaiah.
Now, if we step back, the NIV macro structure of this book beautifully unfolds in 3 massive sweeping arcs. Think of it like a 3-act play. Chapters 1 through 39 lay down the formal charges against Judah right in the thick of the Assyrian crisis, tightly braiding together themes of harsh judgment and divine deliverance. But then, the text makes this monumental pivot. Chapters 40 through 55 shift our gaze far past Assyria, looking straight at the Babylonian horizon. Here, the tone changes entirely to comfort. This is where we are introduced to the magnificent moving songs of the suffering servant. Finally, chapters 56 through 66 lift the veil entirely to reveal global renewal, focusing our eyes on future glory, pure holiness, and the ultimate promise of a new heavens and a new earth.
This brings us to a really fascinating contrast in spiritual leadership during the Assyrian crisis. Take a look at Isaiah 7:9 from the NIV. It warns, "If you do not stand firm in your faith, you will not stand at all." During the Syro-Ephraimite threat, King Ahaz flat-out refused to trust the Lord. He became the ultimate negative model of worldly fear and compromise. But years later, King Hezekiah gave us a completely different response. When Assyria literally had Jerusalem surrounded and besieged, Hezekiah exemplified courageous, desperate dependence on God's spoken word. And what happened? God delivered the entire city in a single night, forever vindicating faithful reliance over panicked political strategy. Those historical events with Hezekiah in chapters 36 through 39 actually serve as the crucial hinge of the entire book. It's a historical narrative right in the middle of prophecy. These chapters record the halting of Sennacherib's violent assault, Hezekiah's miraculous healing from illness, and then, crucially, a seemingly harmless visit from some Babylonian envoys. Hezekiah shows them all his royal treasures. This foolish flirtation with Babylon deeply foreshadows the coming exile. It's the literary pivot that smoothly swings the entire prophecy away from the immediate Assyrian threat and points it directly toward the distant, looming Babylonian horizon.
Section 3. Dispensational context and covenants. Now, to build our systematic understanding of this text, we absolutely must recognize that Isaiah ministered strictly under the dispensation of law.
Judah lived squarely under the Sinai administration. Their national life was framed entirely by the blessings and curses of Deuteronomy. But Isaiah's prophecies? They don't just stay trapped in his present day. Through the miracle of progressive revelation, he looks forward to the mighty outpouring of the Spirit, what we know as the church age of grace, where the law's strict external demands are finally met by deep internal renewal. And he looks even further out, all the way to the literal Messianic kingdom, a physical new heavens and earth where a Davidic king reigns in perfect righteousness. You see, the law powerfully exposes and convicts, but Isaiah shows us that it simply cannot supply the true heart change that only God's grace provides.
This is absolutely critical, students. We have to understand the strict theological distinction between Israel and the church. Covenant integrity holds the very center of Isaiah's theology. The promises of a new, everlasting covenant do not somehow erase or replace God's earlier unconditional oaths to Abraham and David. The promises made to ethnic national Israel remain entirely in force today. As later revelation in Romans perfectly clarifies, the church consists of grafted branches. We beautifully share in the spiritual blessings during this age of grace, but we do not replace the original root. Isaiah perfectly maintains this distinction between Israel and the church while holding them both inside one masterfully orchestrated redemptive plan.
Understanding that covenant fidelity brings us right to Isaiah's absolute favorite title for God, the Holy One of Israel. Now, this isn't just a poetic flourish, it's a massive theological anchor. This title forever binds God's absolute blazing moral purity directly to his unshakable relational fidelity. Because God is holy, he must punish covenant breaches. He cannot ignore the rampant idolatry, the corrupt legal courts, or the fake performative worship of Judah. But precisely because he is the Holy One of Israel, he guarantees the righteous fulfillment of his promises to a purified remnant. His holiness demands severe judgment, yes, but it simultaneously ensures lasting salvation.
Section 4. Progressive Revelation and Prophecy. As we look closely at the text, we see Isaiah taking progressive revelation and braiding it into a single, unbreakable gospel rope. And he uses three distinct chords to do it. First, the royal hope. This is the promise of the Immanuel child, a righteous shoot sprouting from the stump of Jesse who is going to rule the nations with perfect equity. Second, we have the servant vocation. This is the mysterious, spirit-anointed servant who restores Jacob and becomes a shining light for the Gentiles. And third, the Spirit promise, the absolute pledge of an outpoured Spirit that will bring sweeping internal renewal, literally turning the dry, dead spiritual wilderness into a lush, fruitful garden. And all three of these prophetic strands converge beautifully right here in our current age of grace. And nowhere is that servant vocation more powerfully and beautifully realized than in the vital doctrine of substitutionary atonement. It's perfectly summarized in Isaiah 53:5 from the NIV. The servant flawlessly does the Lord's will, willingly pouring out his life to justify the many. The atonement we see here is entirely substitutionary and effective. The crushing weight of guilt is borne away by someone else, resulting in our justification, a completely righteous standing granted to the totally undeserving. This finished, perfect work of the servant forms the very foundation of the grace dispensation that you and I enjoy today.
Section 5. The enduring message today.
Remember, Isaiah was not just standing there lecturing a classroom. He was urgently calling for a vibrant faith that actually shows up in daily life. For believers right now, today, the application is laid out in 4 practical steps. First, return and rest in the Lord. Just abandon the frantic efforts of self-rescue. Second, place your full trust in the servant's finished work for your justification. Third, walk in justice. Isaiah insists powerfully that our worship has to be sincere. We simply cannot lift holy hands in the sanctuary on Sunday and then ignore the oppressed in our community on Monday. And fourth, continually pray for the Spirit's refreshing rain to produce that necessary internal humility and glad obedience in your life.
Ultimately, we are called to live our lives looking firmly toward what Isaiah describes as the kingdom horizon. And I want to be clear, this is not a mere spiritual metaphor for private, internal piety. It is the literal, concrete anticipation of the incoming Messianic kingdom. Knowing that one actual day, actual swords will be hammered into plowshares, and actual wolves will peacefully graze beside lambs, that gives the church today a durable tone of courageous realism. It powerfully protects us from falling into utter despair when we look out at the world's deep brokenness. But it also guards us against any naive utopian optimism that thinks humanity can fix itself. We work justly and we hope stubbornly because we know for an absolute fact that the King is coming.
Section 6. Final blessing and conclusion.
When the daily headlines churn with chaos and your own personal losses begin to thicken, I want you to remember these profound words of the prophet from the NIV. Do you not know?
Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. What a tremendous weight of comfort for the tired saint. May that specific promise carry you through whatever you are facing this week.
May the Holy One of Israel graciously grant you quiet courage and glad obedience as you wait upon His unfailing eternal promises. But as we close, I have to ask you, in a chaotic world that is entirely driven by frantic, exhausting self-rescue, are you truly resting your full weight entirely on the finished work of the servant today? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. For more in-depth studies, visit the Grace and Knowledge series blog at woodybrohm.online.